Chapter 1. How to Deal with Your Child's Visual Impairment. What's your earliest memory? My earliest memory takes me back to when I was just a baby. I wasn't even walking yet. I was crawling across the floor, and I stop. I look down at the floor where the living room carpet meets the kitchen linoleum. My mom's watching me, ironing. I'm nervous. I think I might fall. My mom sets down the iron and says, "There's no drop-off, sweetie." I look back down at the floor and tentatively feel the surfaces, and then off I crawl. It's just linoleum, a different surface. The eye doctor tells my mom not to worry, that there's nothing wrong, but she worries anyway, and incidents keep happening. Eventually, my mom finds the right doctor, and I am diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, a genetic disorder. The struggle for people with retinitis pigmentosa starts long before the person even knows something is wrong. It starts with the parents. This chapter will take parents through the ins and outs of how to handle your child's disability. No pressure. Dealing with the news. So, your child has a disability. What are you going to do about it? How you handle your child's disability will directly affect how they handle it and how they perceive themselves. My mom and brother, who was in college at this point, were both present when the doctors finally diagnosed my eye condition. I was 6. While I was in the back of the hospital recovering from the anesthesia, the doctors informed my mom that I had retinitis pigmentosa and recommended a specialist for me to see. At this point, the doctors had no idea whether I would ever be able to drive or if I would completely lose my vision. Most people with retinitis pigmentosa completely lose their vision, and the doctor did tell my mom that I would be completely blind by the time I was a teenager, but the specialist would discover that wasn't true. That is the one and only time my mother cried over my eyesight. When the tears dried, she said, "Well, at least we know what it is. Now we can figure out how to handle it." That was my mom's approach to my whole life. She accepted my disability as something that might make life harder, but she never let it affect how I lived my life. This is the biggest piece of advice I can give in this book. Parents, don't shelter your children. Don't treat them like there's something wrong with them. If you do, they will grow up thinking that something is wrong with them and that they can't do anything. They will depend solely on you. I know you don't want to think about it, but one day you will not be around, and your child will need to know how to be independent and how to live without your support. That journey starts with how you handle the news that your child has a disability. I didn't know until I started writing this book that my mom had cried that day, but I have a friend who saw his mom cry when he was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa and saw her struggle to accept his disability as he grew up, and wasn't able to do the same things as other kids, like drive, and he had a much greater struggle with the acceptance of his eyesight than I ever did. On the other hand, I have another friend who was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa in his early 20s, and his parents saw him struggling and got him help. They sent Josh to me to hear about my experience and get advice on how to deal with his vision loss. They never let him wallow in the loss, and now he is adjusted, happy, and has completely accepted his visual impairment. Josh is a pretty upbeat and happy guy. He came to me for years after being diagnosed to talk about his bad days and to get advice on how to handle certain situations, but really, Josh is optimistic and was able to bounce himself out of that funk eventually. I just talked him off the immediate edge. Be strong. Your child needs you to show them the way, and they need your support. Raising your child. Everyone's parenting style is different. I am not here to tell you that there is only one right way to guarantee your child's success. There's not. I'm here to tell you what worked for me and what has worked for other families I have observed who have children with disabilities. My mom enrolled me in gymnastics when I was 1 year old. I progressed into competitive gymnastics at the age of 9 and continued to compete until I was 16. People would always ask my mom, "How do you let her do that? I wouldn't let my sighted child do that." My mom would always respond with the same thing. I do the same thing I did with all my kids. I just pray and I go to every game, meet, and event. Anyone could get hurt playing a sport. She's no more likely to get hurt than any of them. She loves gymnastics, and I would never dream of pulling her out of something she loves. In addition to gymnastics, I also participated in horseback riding, dance, cheerleading, and track. I was constantly going when I was younger. I didn't have extra time where I was sitting around thinking about how different I was from everyone else, and I didn't feel different because I got to do everything everyone else was doing. Find your child's passion, the thing they love to do, and help them do it. Having things in your life that you enjoy helps stave off the depression that can overcome some people who have a disability. Disclaimer: I understand that all of those activities were expensive and not everyone has the money to do all of those things. Even if it's just playing basketball with the neighborhood kids, I promise it will make a difference. There's also a lot of school-based activities that are low cost or may even have financial aid. There's also the recreation department. If you're really worried about your child participating in a sport, become the coach of their rec team and help them make the adjustments they need as you see problems arise. Helping your child deal with bullies. We are in the age of bullying. Later on in this book, I will discuss how someone with retinitis pigmentosa should deal with bullying, but it all starts with parents. I didn't have any friends at school until 5th grade because I wore huge Coke bottle glasses and looked different than the other kids. I got contacts in 5th grade. I remember days when I would feel lonely and depressed. My mom would always tell me to think about the people out there that had it worse than me. This single piece of advice has helped me throughout my entire life. No matter how old your child gets or how confident and happy they act, they will have bad days. When I was younger, my mom would make me list things that were worse than having a visual impairment. I still do this as an adult. When I have these bad days, I always think, well, at least I'm not in a wheelchair. Or, I'm glad I have a roof over my head and I'm not living in a box under a bridge. This philosophy has created a slight fear in me of becoming paralyzed, but it reminds me that it could always be worse. There are a lot of mean people out in the world, but your child needs to know that they are an awesome person and that there are worse things out there. In addition, I would not suggest calling these bullies out unless your child is in immediate danger. It will just make the situation worse, and your child will not know how to deal with bullies themselves. Your child will continue to be bullied even as an adult, so they need to know how to deal with it themselves. Giving your child independence. This is probably the most important section in this chapter, and I know it's going to be hard for many of you to hear, and even harder for some of you to put into practice, but it is very important you do. Treat your child like any other child. Let them go to friends' houses. Let them try new things. And most importantly, don't ever tell your child they can't do something because they can't see. I mean, I wouldn't suggest for them to drive a forklift, but don't tell them they can't do things within reason. I'm staring out of the window of my dad's truck while he drives me to school. My dad says, "I called Furman University and talked to their admissions office." I continue to look out of the window without making a comment. "They said that you could stay at this one dorm that's on the same side of the street as all your classes, so you'll never have to cross the street." Finally, I turn my head and just raise my eyebrows for a moment. Super! What about everything else in life, like food, running, going to hang out with friends? Is the college moving all of that to the same side of the road? I snip. This is the beginning of one of the many fights my dad and I would have about college. He tried to force me to go to Furman University, a school I had no interest in going to, by the way. We even escalated to the point where he said he would not pay for me to go to any other college. Fortunately for me, I was very independent and worked very hard in school, so I was able to get a full ride to the College of Charleston, my first choice school. But my dad and I had an argument almost daily through my junior and senior year of high school on our rides to school over college. All these arguments did was push my dad and me apart and make it much less likely that I would listen to him in the future about things. It took my dad and me years to repair our relationship. On the other hand, you can be realistic with your child about what they can do. My mom once told me I couldn't be the goalie in recreation soccer because the other team might figure out I didn't have peripheral vision and might try to pass the ball to someone on the side before they kicked it into the goal. She was afraid of people taking advantage of my visual field. I want to add that I played goalie in middle school during PE when we would play soccer and was pretty good at it, but she was correct in not letting me think I could play on a real team. I might have been a hindrance to them, and that would have been much more embarrassing. It's all about being realistic and not letting the fear rule what you let your child do. If my dad had given me strategies on how to safely cross streets or advice like will later come in this book on how to go to college with a visual impairment, instead of trying to force me to go somewhere I didn't want to go and embarrassing me by calling the school and telling them I couldn't cross a street, things might have been different for us. Even if he talked to the colleges I wanted to go to about safety precautions, it would have been better. I know you're terrified for your kid to be out on their own in a new place where you can't protect them and help them, but they want independence, and, quite frankly, they need independence. You aren't going to be around forever, and they need to know how to get along without your help. I understand it's scary. I understand that you are afraid of your child getting hit by a car they don't see, or getting lost in a new place. It will help both you and your child ease some of the fears of being on their own if you teach them the skills they need to function on their own. Make sure your child learns orientation and mobility, cane use. Make sure they know how to use the GPS on their phones. Orient them to their new environment. And if they call you panicked because they are lost, have them drop a pin and help them figure out where they need to go. Technology is a great aid in keeping your child safe. Make use of it. My mom and I walked my college campus about 10 times to make sure I knew where all my classes were before school started. I didn't know this at the time, but she also, creepily, followed me from a distance on my first day of school to make sure I got everywhere I needed to go. This made her feel better and didn't embarrass me because no one knew she was my mom or was following me. Advice from my mom. Many parents might read this section and realize I never talk about my children. Well, besides my furry, four-legged child, I don't have any children. It doesn't make the advice in this chapter any less true, but I wanted to add direct advice from a mother, my mother. Being a mother is always hard. You're always worried that your child will get hurt. I am the mother of 2 fully sighted and 1 visually impaired child, and I can tell you that the feelings of fear and concern for all my children were the same. I sat terrified at every football game that my son would get injured. I constantly worried that my oldest daughter would get hurt during a cheerleading stunt. And I sat on pins and needles while I watched my youngest daughter do flips on the balance beam. Raising a fully sighted child comes with the same fears as raising a visually impaired one. It is no different. You should not treat them any differently because they are no less or more likely to get injured than a regularly sighted child. I fully believe in letting children explore the world around them and believe that they should participate in the things they love. I would never dream of taking away the things they love to do. Put your fears aside. It isn't about you. To be a parent, you have to be selfless. You'll always be afraid for your children. You want them to succeed and be safe, but it's how you handle the fear that counts. Takeaways. Don't treat your child like they have a disability and like they are different than everyone else. Let your child explore their interest. Almost anything can be modified so that your visually impaired child can do it. Teach your child to think about the people who have it worse than they do so they don't feel sorry for themselves. Give them the tools to deal with bullies, but don't fight their battles for them. Let your child have their independence. Let them make their own choices, but help them succeed in those situations to the best of your ability, rather than trying to force them to do something they don't want to do. This is no different than with your sighted child. Manage your fear. You will always worry about your child, but you have to let them live and grow. Resources. Check out your state's Blind Services Organization or vocational rehabilitation. The state's blind service may be able to help with scholarships, assistive technology, and learning skills from Braille to how to find a job. IRA connects visually impaired people with a trained agent that will help enhance their everyday life. The agent will see a live video of the individual's surroundings and can help them find where they're going, pick out an item on a grocery shelf, read signs, and much more. This is a monthly subscription after the purchase of the glasses. Go to this website to learn more. https://AIRA.io. Southeastern Guide Dogs provides guide dogs to visually impaired teens starting at the age of 15. They also provide kids' companion dogs to visually impaired children to help them learn how to take care of a large breed dog prior to getting a guide dog. Southeastern also has a kids camp for visually impaired teens ages 14 through 17 and their parents, where kids and parents can learn how a guide dog could help them navigate the world around them, as well as teaches parents about guide dogs. To learn more about their kid and teen programs, follow this link. https://apply/dogs.org/apply/dogs-for-children-youth/. Want to learn more about retinitis pigmentosa? Check out the National Eye Institute here. https://nei.nih.gov/health/pigmentosa/pigmentosa_facts.